Weekly Spooky is brought to you by our generous supporters on Patreon. Get access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and more for as little as $1 a month when you go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on the Patreon link. Your support has gotten us to 100 episodes, so join up today and help us create another 100 and beyond. Head over to WeeklySpooky.com and join the Patreon. Hello friends, if this is your first time listening to Weekly Spooky, this is not an average episode. This is our 100th episode celebration, which features 10 stories from 10 different authors broken into 2 episodes. So if you want to see what Weekly Spooky is like week in and week out, please check out a different episode. But otherwise, please kick back and enjoy our celebration. Thank you so much for helping us reach 100 episodes.
This is Weekly Spooky. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for a weak at heart. But who merely listens to warnings anyway? Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way.
Hello, my friends. I am your host, Henrik Kuto, and, well, to be honest, I'm a little bit overwhelmed because today it's our 100th episode. And I wanted to do something special. I wanted to give you something, I don't know, just different after 100 episodes of terrifying tales and haunted horrors. So, I wanted to do something special to help you get to know me. Something to let you fine fiends know that we here at Weekly Spooky consider all of you out there a part of our family. Our highly dysfunctional family, but a family all the same. So to that eerie end, let's take a deep dive into this little terror tome documenting the highs and lows of a fearsome family near and dear to my heart. Here's a good one to kick things off. The story of Martine Celestino, who proves that being suave isn't just for the living. Let's call this one Romance is Dead. Martine Celestino was an important man. Once, in the latter part of the 19th century, he oversaw Ensada Caixo, an often overlooked member of the Azores archipelago. The royal family of Portugal were quite generous with his monthly stipend, which, as a good governor, he saw fit to return to the local island economy, mostly through his patronage of its only bordello. However, an island like Caixo doesn't have much real estate to go around. The whorehouse shared its roof with the library, and after fucking himself into near coma, Martine liked to find a book to occupy the remainder of the evening. It was during this time that a shipment of American dime novels arrived as a thank you from none other than Mark Twain, who spent time in the Azores some years prior. Martine fell in love with the concept of the American outlaw. He longed for that sort of adventure and thrill and daring romance. He devoured every one of their stories that came to the library and made up his mind. Martine contacted his cousin, Gonzalo, who'd been living abroad in the village of Brooklyn, and booked his journey to America. The voyage was tedious, but uneventful, as was his arrival to the land of gunslingers. Martine quickly dressed the part, complete with a Colt 78 revolver that the merchant seemed particularly happy to rid himself of. Gonzalo made all the necessary arrangements for his cousin to travel by wagon train to Texas. After all, that's where you went if you wanted to become an outlaw. Whilst passing through Arkansas, Martine struck up a conversation with a railroad worker named Samuel King. However, Martine's education in proper English had not prepared him for whatever the hell Americans spoke, and the two quickly came to a disagreement. Martine's aristocratic pride, coupled with the dick-hardening reassurance of American shooting iron on his hip, spurred the would-be outlaw into action, and he drew his new revolver in a flash. If he hadn't been so drunk, Martine might have realized his dreams of meeting a legendary gunfighter had been granted. You see, Samuel King was formerly known as J.J. Webb. That J.J. Webb. Long story short, Martine was left in a makeshift grave somewhere outside the town of Winslow, with 3 bullets from his own gun rattling inside his skull. For those of you that were wondering, Mr. King conveniently died of smallpox about the time news of the shooting hit the wire, and definitely didn't flee the area to seek fortune and glory under a new name before bounty hunters could collect on his head. And that brings us to the gas and grub. Becky Clover waited until the store manager pulled out of the parking lot before she ditched the G&G employee vest. There was a name tag clipped to the collar of her Rawhead Rex t-shirt, and she was standing behind the cash register, which should be more than enough indication that she worked there, without the stupid vest. Becky went about her day as she always did. First came the after-school rush, then a short lull to restock the beverage bar, then it was time for the after-work crowds, then a short lunch break. After lunch, her coworker went home and left her to her own devices for the remainder of the evening. The gas and grub used to shut down at night before they hired Becky. No one wanted to stay there by themselves on account of the weird happenings, especially in regards to the beer cave. Becky was pretty weird herself, however, and wasn't bothered in the least. Becky finished checking out a customer, and then went to straighten the single-serving cans. They'd already been faced forward exactly as she expected them to be. "Good evening, Martine," she whispered. "Just chillin' as usual?" A fog formed on the door next to her, and words appeared a letter at a time in the condensation. "Funny. How was your day off, dear?" "Decent. I went to the park and read the new Babysitter Massacre book. I'll leave it on the counter so you can check it out." The condensation cleared itself, and a new canvas appeared. "Thank you. Will you be staying late tonight?" "Of course, silly. It's movie night. I brought a romantic comedy this time. It's called Dead Alive. You're gonna love it." "I'm sure I will. You have impeccable taste for a mortal." "Don't think you're going to charm me out of my panties tonight, mister," she smirked. "Not that I'm actually wearing any." Martine was getting very good at possessing inanimate objects. She'd brought a special one in her bag for him to try out later. But she was saving that surprise until after the movie. A pair of lips smacked against the glass, leaving their print behind. Becky kissed 2 fingers and pressed them against the spot. Becky was the only person to ever see Martine, and the two hit it off immediately. Each of her shifts ended with some activity between the two of them. Fridays, he helped her finish her cleaning, and they spent the extra time watching movies he'd missed out on account of being dead. The electronic bell chimed over the door, and Becky turned to see a bedraggled man in an oversized army surplus jacket. She rolled her eyes. It was 86 degrees, meaning the man was either coming down off a meth binge or... "Open the fucking register," he growled, jerking the sawed-off rifle from under his coat. "Now, bitch!" Or was about to rob the place. "Why?" Becky asked matter-of-factly. She shrugged. "The registers are balanced and all the excess is dropping into a time-release safe. You're going to get like $50. "Goddamn right I am." The tweaker looked from side to side nervously. "Get me my money." "You should try eating brighter crayons. Maybe something will rub off on you." Becky shut the cooler door and went around to the other side, wiggling a finger for the thief to follow. A wide glass door emblazoned with a "Must be 21 to enter" sign led into the beer cave. She opened the door and waved a hand like a game show host. "There's always someone that wants to cash a scratch-off ticket 20 minutes before we close," she said. "We can't go insulting customers by expecting them to follow the rules, so we keep a lockbox hidden behind the overstock cases." The robber scrunched his face, then smiled with all 6 of his teeth. "I knew you was gonna be a smart girl." "Very." Becky pointed out the stack of OK Brewing's Drunker Sooner 30-packs. "It's behind those because no one actually drinks that shit. I'd get it for you, but I'd get fired, and then who would help you out next time? If you go in there and just happen to find it yourself, we both win." The thief shoved past her and stepped into the cave. Martine preferred it in there. The temperature differential caused by his presence went unnoticed, and reduced the electricity requirement to keep the beer cold. Becky sighed and shut the door. The cameras fogged up whenever the cave door opened, so the manager turned them off. "Have fun, sweetie," Becky said. A stack of cases crashed to the floor with a bang. Martine's smiling face appeared in the glass just before it fogged over. Becky skipped back to the counter as a car pulled up to the sidewalk. A kid got out and pushed through the door, looking around in confusion. "Restrooms are over." Becky was interrupted by the sticky splat of 9 pints of blood spraying across the glass walls of the beer cave. She giggled. What the... That's not..." The teen kept a trembling finger pointed at the gory Rorschach test. "Oh, just red wine," Becky reassured him with a playful laugh. "Those fancy bottles never fit the rails right and fall off the shelf sometimes." The intercom crackled to life. "Clean up in the beer cave. There's been a spill," the voice said with its suave Portuguese accent. "See?" Becky smiled up at the speaker. "Nothing to worry about." "Right," the whisper whispered. Bathroom?" Becky pointed over her shoulder and watched the kid disappear around the corner. She looked at the mess dripping down the windows. The blood swept away in 2 lines, curving away from each other, and then joining again at the base. Becky stared at the heart on the glass and sighed. Martine was such a romantic. I don't know about you, but all that talk of convenience stores has made me feel a bit, peckish. Ooh, here it is. This brings back some serious memories. I wish the family still had the old buffet place. Best mashed potatoes in 12 counties. Let's call this one Country Cookin'. So, are the mashed potatoes gluten-free? The boy behind the buffet counter did not move. He did not respond to the woman in the trendy mom jeans. Despite her stare, her oversized sunglasses made it hard for him to tell where she looked. Her hair, long on one side and parted to obscure one of her sunglasses, did not move when she shook her head at him. There was enough hairspray holding it up to put another hole in the ozone layer. "Excuse me," the woman waved her hands. "Did you hear me, or do I need to ask to speak with your manager?" The boy smiled. "My father is the manager." "Great." The woman dropped her hands to the side. The cheap, fake jewelry on her wrists clattered together. "But that didn't answer my question." The boy looked over the buffet's serving containers. Food blobbed from them as hungry customers spooned the slop onto their plates with no compassion for their fellow man. After reading the labels, the boy found the one for mashed potatoes. He eyed the flimsy crust coating the food within. He should have stirred it about a half hour ago. "I'm not sure." He grabbed the serving tray labeled mashed potatoes from the buffet. The steam from the heated water below burned his skin. "I'll get some more mashed potatoes and ensure they are not glutened." That's not... The boy didn't hear what the woman said before he entered the kitchen area. The smell of sizzling meat hit the boy's nose before he felt the heat of the pots boiling with delicious side dishes. His mother stood in front of a large skillet. The meat she prepared dripped with fat as it cooked, and the boy eyed the searing flesh with hunger. But he knew he would have to wait for his break to eat the grisly meal in front of him. "Mom," he said, holding up the crispy top tray, "the lady out there asked if these were unglutened. Are they?" His mother turned around. She stabbed her finger through the brown surface and into the gooey, white, chunky interior. Her finger came out of the pan dripping with a generous helping. Food still dripping from it, she put her finger into her mouth and sucked. "You mean gluten-free." She wiped the saliva from her finger onto her pants. "And no, I don't think this batch is. You might as well go make a new one. Need me to show you how?" The boy's ears perked up. His heart sped up with anticipation. "No, Mom. Making the mashed potatoes is the funnest and easiest job. I can handle it." "All right." The boy's mother coughed. Some phlegm from her throat flew onto the meat in front of her and sizzled on contact. "You might as well get some more cornflakes while you're in there, too. We're running low." The boy watched as his mother's finger exited her nose and pointed to a heat lamp. Underneath its bright, hot light, crusty chips labeled cornflakes laid in a greasy container. The boy nodded. "Should I do that first or get the mashed potatoes? The cornflakes take longer." She pressed her spatula on a piece of meat. Fat and blood leaked onto the skillet. "The mashed potatoes are pretty much ready when they come out." The boy walked around the kitchen. He grabbed a knife from a drawer. From another, he took a small Tupperware container. His shoulders tensed as he stood in front of a door labeled pantry. He placed his hand on the door handle and took a deep breath. "I'm coming to get some cornflakes." He shoved open the door. Masses of people in various states of dismemberment and decay shrank from the light of the open door. The chains bound each person in an uncomfortable state of agony. Those still alive screamed in pain and desperation, but the ball gags covering their face muffled them. They fought against their restraints as the boy walked by. He tapped the knife against his chin as he looked upon festering sores which rotted in the living thing's flesh. A smirk split his face when he noticed a young woman with missing hands strapped to a metal ring by her feet. His eyes moved up and down her body, paying extra attention to the pus-oozing gash splitting her skin from her left ear down to her left thigh. The boy held his knife against the wound. It seeped with infection from his slightest touch. "You'll do perfect for cornflakes." She cried out as the boy used the knife to scrape the scabbed flesh away from her wound. He caught the oozing flesh in his Tupperware container as it came off in stringy chunks. The boy's smirk remained plastered on his face as he cut away the rotten, dead skin which leaked yellow infection. When he'd removed the scabbed outer layer and scraped what remained of the meaty inner layer from the woman's wound, he squeezed at the open gash until pus trickled into the Tupperware dish. It was like juicing an orange. "It's okay," the boy said as his container caught her leaking fluids. "I only need to juice you a little bit." With a last push on the woman's infected flesh, the boy's Tupperware almost spilled over with cornflake precursor. The strings of rotted flesh, chunky yellow liquid, and clear pus fought to escape their plastic prison, but the boy's smooth movements as he walked out of the room kept the stuff from sloshing out. Once he was back in the kitchen, the boy poured his Tupperware dish's contents in with the cooked cornflakes underneath the buzzing heat lamp. His mother sniffed as the liquid sizzled. "Now those are some fine-smelling country cornflakes." Excited by his mother's words, the boy walked up next to her. "Can I use the same container for the mashed potatoes?" "Sure, they're both vegetables. I don't think the health inspector can cite us for cross-contamination. Plus, it'll give the mashed potatoes a boost of flavor." The boy's smirk returned as he walked across the kitchen to a metal door. He tapped the door twice, but didn't hear a response from inside. Cracking the door, the boy whispered, "Cousin, it's mashed potato time." When there was still no response, the boy opened the door and walked in. The humid air of the room, a sauna by design, hit the boy's lungs at the same time as an oppressive stench entered his nose. A man covered in boils, legions, and lymphomas writhed against a greasy chair, his sweat and grime caked into his pores, causing each one to become blocked. His skin looked like the surface of a basketball. Holding the knife to a throbbing mass of skin, the boy looked his adversary in the eyes. They both smiled. "I've learned all sorts of techniques since last time," the boy said, lancing the bulging flesh in front of him. A long stream of white fluid shot out, but the boy was fast. He moved his container and caught the liquid. With the initial geyser from the lymphoma done, the boy now had to milk the leaking mound in order to reach its delicious, meaty interior. He set down the knife and squeezed the oversized pimple. Chunky white liquid oozed from the mass and into the Tupperware dish. The boy put pressure on the shrinking protrusion until it stopped producing its sweet nectar. After emptying the lymphoma, he moved on to another boil. The boy milked and squeezed until he filled his container with all the mashed potatoes he needed. The boy patted his kin's back. Some mashed potatoes seeped out. "See you later." The boy waved goodbye to his cousin before walking out of the room. "Boy, he sure had a lot of mashed potatoes to give today," the boy said as he grabbed a serving tray and poured the fresh mashed potatoes inside. "He always does." The boy's mother smiled. "And you make sure to tell the nice lady out there those mashed potatoes are gluten-free." The boy nodded. He walked through the door into the dining room. Once he returned to the buffet, the boy put the mashed potatoes tray into the empty section. He looked up and smiled at the woman from earlier. She didn't react to him as her hoop earrings caught the shine of the fluorescent lights overhead. "Don't worry, ma'am." The boy placed a serving spoon into the tray. "These are 100% unglutenated. My cousin helped me make them fresh." That was a meal fit for, well, no one. But hey, if your family has a big enough appetite, anything that can fill those bottomless pits they call bellies would be well and truly appreciated. Speaking of big families. Oh my gosh, look at them. They're all so young in this. Well, I mean, I guess we're always younger in photos, otherwise it would be a very special camera. Anyway, this creepy clan is never satisfied with the plentitude of their ranks, and any opportunity to expand their number is eagerly pounced upon. She was the part of the family that wound up by Strickfield. So, man, look at her there. So young. I haven't seen her in so long. Let's just call this story Young Eve. Eve, short for Evangeline, was the one member of the family that almost no one ever talked about. And for, very good reason. Eve was said to be born bad. Not the kind of bad that would make a babysitter want to demand triple pay for putting up with her, but the kind of bad that would make even her own family members cringe at just hearing her first name. None of Evangeline's family or her colleagues could understand how she possessed such vast intelligence. Even when she went to Strickfield University, many of the other students in her classes cringed at the sight of her. She looked like any other normal girl, except that her IQ was the highest out of all of her family and classmates. She could understand and do so many things that none of her peers could do. There was that incident back in Dayton East High School during a science class where the students were expected to perform frog dissections. Evangeline had somehow reanimated her dead frog instead of dissecting it. All the necessary chemicals were right there in the classroom. All Evangeline had to do was put the correct mixture together and inject it into the frog. Not only did her classmates scream in terror, but so did the teacher. When the principal had asked her how she reanimated her frog, she just looked at him and smiled. That evil smile of hers, guaranteeing her expulsion from Dayton East High School. As Evangeline was moved from one high school to another, as one horrifying incident to another would occur, she would ascend from making monstrosities happen to the wonderful world of cloning. The truth was that she had been wanting to explore this forbidden science for the longest time, but she hadn't known enough about it yet. Once she had acquired the knowledge from her animal, sea life, and insect experiments between high school and early university, it was time for her to begin on humans. One day, Simon, one of her younger brothers, was killed in a hit-and-run automobile accident in front of her family's house. Evangeline didn't really care if her immediate family would have been devastated or not, but she saw this as a golden opportunity for her first major human experiment. Taking Simon's blood and disposing of his body was easy as pie. In the highly advanced lab at Strickfield University, a little twitch here, a new combination there, some fusions to the RNA, and Evangeline had created a enhanced identical clone to take the original's place. The rest of her family was none the wiser about Simon's death, or rebirth. Evangeline was so overjoyed with her first success in human cloning that she could barely contain herself. The rest of her family never knew the difference, or suspected anything, at least for a while. The new Simon clone had all of the original's memories and identity. Knowing that her experiment was a complete success, she knew she had to take her human experiments to the next level. She decided that she must preserve the family bloodline, no matter what. Evangeline continued her work in secret and would discreetly obtain blood samples from the rest of her immediate family. Upon completing her second successful human clone, this one being her youngest sister, she tightened her fists and screamed with delight. With all the possible genetic combinations that she could utilize, the bloodline would not only continue on, the original versions would no longer be necessary. Evangeline would make the new, upgraded family. One by one, Evangeline would clone each and every member of her family. She couldn't help but consider herself to be the most intelligent human being on Earth. The outside world had shunned her for her intelligence, but Evangeline would recreate the world in her image. It was said that Evangeline had returned to Dayton East High School with her new siblings and watched as they massacred as many people as they possibly could. The secret that the clones held was that they had become zombified and developed a craving for human flesh. Those living that saw Evangeline's face before they were torn apart and devoured by the zombie clones would have sworn that they saw true evil in its purest form when she smiled. The more Evangeline saw the fruits of her labor, the more she began to realize that she couldn't stop here. She needed to do even more experiments. There needed to be more clones. The world would never be perfect unless she made it so. Even if they were zombies, they were all still her family. After leaving Strickfield University, she procured another state-of-the-art laboratory closer to her home in Dayton. She was so overwhelmed with the emotions of what she was about to do that she could barely contain herself. Still, Evangeline focused on her work. She had also procured more blood samples, both before and after the Dayton East High School massacre. She had so many DNA samples now that she could really expand her family. All she needed to do was splice the DNA with her unique combinations. It had taken Evangeline 2 days before she had new clones ready to go. She was too excited to sleep or eat. She was so very close. All was in readiness now. All she had to do was bring her new clones to life. Evangeline's version of the family would both grow and continue, and she alone would be the sole matriarch of it all. Then, she had a horrible, demented thought. Did the biblical God not tell Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply? Since the zombies, clones or otherwise, would infect others to bring them into her new and growing family, her new role as God would have the same purpose. It was here where Evangeline would decide to rechristen herself as simply Eve. The biblical Eve was God's first woman. Evangeline was the first woman who had created what would be a new age of the family. She would be both God and Eve of her new world. It was said that these fiendish creatures were eventually overcome and destroyed by a lynch mob, who decided that these mad experiments needed to end when more of Eve's revenge massacres had taken place. But Eve herself wasn't so easily defeated. In fact, Eve had found a new lab and recreated a new family based on the tainted family DNA that she had preserved. It had taken her many, many hours, ultimately a few years, but she had created new clones of some of the most important people in today's history, replacing their original copies. Of course, after a time, the clones would become zombies and help to expand Eve's family. Eve's zombie clones are said to be in not just the bloodline alone, but it's rumored to have expanded into the top branches of governments and even the major corporations of the world. At least, that's what the top conspiracy theorists have said. I know what you're thinking. Henrik, are you a clone? Well, if I was, do you think I would tell all of you? You know, that last little yarn proves just how far-thinking my family really is. Very proud. Oh man, look at that haircut. Oh, Mortimer. A recently ex-member of the fearsome family of mine, and his sojourn from beyond the grave to the far-flung future just proves it. Wait, how is this story from the future in this old book? You know what? No. When life is good, or in this case, creepy, it's best not to ask questions. Let's read on. I'll call this one, off the top of my head, Evolution and the Reanimation Indigestion Consternation. A rapid beeping sound came from the ship's console. Okay, Class P348, we are approaching our destination. Please put away your entertainment devices, the professor said through the small slit of a mouth in his pale gray skin. His large black orbs looked over the students. Today, we are going to be looking at the cadaver of a human male, most recently deceased, and from what I've heard is the cultural center of Earth, Ohio. The engines went silent as the ship locked into an orbit over North America. Professor Henry, if there's time, can we look at their primitive flying machines they keep locked up in that large building? I heard they have something called a shuttle on display there that they say can reach space. Is that true? One of the students, Brainock, asked. First, let us use the human names we all chose for this trip. Call me Alan. And I'm sorry, the only location we are interested in on this trip is the compound. Dayton is far too dangerous for a field trip. Your parental units would be displeased. Snevarb's guide says the compound is where all the interesting and safe action is at. The class will beam down to the Earth-renowned library and into the adjacent family graveyard, the professor said, pointing to a screen that had a list of obituaries. Is that understood, Brainock? My Earth name is Bread, Bread responded. Okay, Bread. Bread Brimstone. I think it's from one of their cartoons. The class gathered close on the teleporter pad and looked at their professor. Remember, it is a special day on Earth called Halloween. It's the one day of the year we can move about without drawing unwanted attention to ourselves, Alan said, and tapped a button on his school badge. A light engulfed them, and they left the ship. Upon arrival on the planet, the gray aliens first felt exposed. The fall breeze whipped around their frail, naked frame, but, with an adjustment to their environmental bracelets, they soon were comfortable, if not still naked. They looked wide-eyed at the large wooden doors in front of them. Inside was the foremost collection of the arcane and macabre. The collection was the centerpiece of the compound built by the crazy mustachioed philanthropist and filmmaker that made the family fortune. Legend had it, he made the world's record number of B-movies and podcasts, and later, mustache wax commercials. Bread looked at the doors longingly. His major was human myth and legends, what he wouldn't give for an hour in that building. But he was here as part of an anatomy class, an elective in the human studies program. Even though he couldn't enter the building himself, he had a plan. He placed on the stone wall a scanning device. It would absorb information from within the library while they collected the body, and before they leave, he would retrieve it and take as much of the information as he could back with him. The class moved into the cemetery to excavate the freshly buried Mortimer. He wasn't as famous as his kin, more like the crazy uncle that was shied away from at gatherings. The dirt began to pull out of the ground and form piles next to the graves thanks to the archaeological equipment brought along. It didn't take long until the casket was hovering over the open grave at eye level of the awed students. Death was a concept unknown to most of them. Science had long ago conquered disease and aging. The professor gave a look around to make sure no human was witnessing their educational grave robbery. Once he was satisfied, he placed a metal wedge under the lid of the cheap pine box. A flash of light illuminated through the cracks in the wood, and the top vanished, revealing the corpse within. As you can see, class, the body is still untouched. No preservation methods were taken, as his will instructed, the professor said, and gestured at the body before them. "What's that around his neck?" Bread asked, reaching into the pine box. The shiny amulet was so large it took up his entire palm. "Caro autem vita," Bread read aloud and looked up at his teacher. "And what does that mean, Bread?" Professor Allen asked him. "I don't know," Bread replied. "I am failing my human languages course." Suddenly, his black eyes lit up as he remembered his scanning device. He ran over to the stone wall and pulled it off, returning to his class excited. He ran the device over the amulet. A voice translated the words and spoke them out loud. "The flesh is life." A chill spread across Bread's smooth gray skin. He checked to make sure his environmental controls were working. "What does that mean, Professor?" he said. "Oh wait, there's more here on the back." Bread scanned the back of the amulet. "Advescendum carnes caro autem vita." Bread read as the device translated. "Return to flesh. The flesh is life." Suddenly, the eyes of the corpse popped open. The body sat up. "Hey!" came a voice from the open mouth. A worm fell from the orifice into its lap. Its eyes darted rapidly from one alien to another, taking in his surroundings. Bread was so startled he never moved back, and his gaze followed that of the corpse, to his hand still clutching the amulet around Mortimer's neck. "Aha!" the corpse said, and promptly bit down into the soft gray flesh of Bread's finger, severing it from its first knuckle. "What's happening?" his classmate called out, putting its hand to the side of its face and pacing back and forth. "Calm yourself," Professor Allen called out, and pulled Bread away from the animated corpse. "You study the earthly macabre. What is it?" Allen asked Bread in a near panic. "A zombie, Professor," Bread replied. "What does it teach?" asked Allen. "No, it's a zombie. You are the professor," Bread explained. "Who are you guys? You sure are delicious," the corpse said, and tore the arm from another student. His teeth sunk into the limb like a turkey leg. "I don't like this," said Tater Tot. "Are you Mortimer?" asked Bread, fascinated by the strange circumstance. His finger itched as it began to grow back. "I guess you could call me Morto Myrrh. Or Mordo for short, he said, climbing out of the casket and wiping off his suit. He looked around, but no one was laughing at his lame joke. No sense of humor. Must be from Akron, he finished. You are supposed to be dead. Humans die. We are here to see a dead human, Alan explained. Sorry to disappoint, kids, but I made a deal, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to eat you all now. It's nothing personal. I don't even know you guys, but a deal is a deal. I can live as long as I consume human flesh, Mordo explained. There's been an error, Bread said, scratching at his finger. It didn't feel right. I agree, Mordo said, belching, black blood escaping his mouth. You guys eat garlic? I was allergic. We are not human offspring looking for confectionaries on a day of costuming. We are aliens here to probe and dissect a corpse, Tater Tot chimed in. A dead corpse, Alan added. Well, I gotta eat something, Mordo said and grabbed for another alien meal. To the ship, Bread yelled out, and the aliens ran back to the transporter pad near the library. Mordo chased after them, but he seemed to be having some difficulty. They could hear him belching and farting behind them as he gave chase. We can't just leave him running around like this, can we? One of the aliens asked. What hopes do the humans have against him? Or that smell? Shreveport is right. We can't let him run around loose, Alan agreed. I've got an idea. It was part of my human myth class. It should only take a second to find my notes, Bread said, and looked through his scanning device for the right entry. Get back here, you tasty little gray bastards, Mordo called out from the darkness between a string of gaseous escapes. You're giving me indigestion. Very rude. We need a rescue. I found the entry, Bread exclaimed. I call you forth. Protect us like you did the first master of this compound. Come forth, brave Chicano! Bread said, his gray arms wide. A howl was heard, and then a flash of brown and white. Morto screamed as the aliens reached the pad to beam back aboard the ship. What is that? Tater Tot asked Bread. The best protector on the planet, human's best friend. A rescue dog, Bread said. Alan hit the button and the aliens beamed up. It sure is good to be back and safe, Tater Tot said. Sure is, Bread said, itching his finger and looking at the crowd of tasty gray flesh in front of him. You hear that, Chicano? That story was about you. It's good to know a good dog doesn't change even after some time has passed. I think we should get a bit more grounded going forth. No. Nope. There's a good memory. Wow, this is even a photo of the first coat of paint. I love that color. This is a calm little tale of the family's ancestral bed and breakfast. A serene story full of homespun values, honest laughter, and, of course, copious amounts of wholesome bodily fluids spraying forth in wild abandon. Let's call this one Hanky and the Homunculus. Steam whistled from the tea kettle. Hanky paused the game on his phone and turned off the gas oven burner. He grabbed a tray balanced with wine, wine glasses, and assorted cheeses. He passed antiques and baubles from his family's storied past and walked up creaking stairs to the door of the guest room. Room service, he chirped. Brandon answered the door. Susie lay on the bed on pristine white sheets. Thanks, Brandon said with a curt nod. Hanky cleared his throat. Here at Hanky's House Bed and Breakfast, we aim to... Brandon closed the door with one foot. Hanky sighed. The stairs creaked underfoot as he made his way down. They made no noise at all when he crept back up. Ear to the gate, he caught wine being poured, glasses clinking together, laughter. His pants grew tight. Sharp inhales as mouths joined in passion. Hanky undid his pants and thumbed the hard tip. Low moans as the bed creaked. Hanky stroked himself in rhythm. Those sheets wouldn't be clean much longer, and dirty laundry went to the basement. Hanky's phone rang, loud. The bed stopped creaking. He tucked himself into the waistband of his underwear as he tried to silence his phone, but he couldn't reach the button. He rushed downstairs, buttoning his pants. His twin brother stood at the front door, cell phone in hand. He hung up. "What the heck? Why were your pants down?" Hanky shushed him. "Rick, I told you not to come here when I have guests." Rick shrugged. "Is Grandpa's shotgun here? That guy wants to see about buying it." "It's in the basement. Wait here, I'll go get it." Hanky walked to the basement door. His keys jingled in hand as he unlocked the door and closed it behind himself. Stairs creaked underfoot until he padded in dirt. He passed the washer-dryer combo, boxes of knickknacks, a podium with an ancient tome, and a massive sow with blood-stained lips. Grandpa's shotgun lay against the back wall. He patted the sow on her rough back. She grunted, coughed, and farted. She was ready for the spell, and he was so horny. Upstairs, he locked the door behind him. Rick held the statuette of Jesus Hanky kept by the front door. "Put that down," he snapped. Rick put down Jesus. "Cheese and rice, Dickie. Don't have a sow. It's Hanky, like Mother calls me." Rick took the shotgun. "You need divine intervention." Hanky scoffed. "Don't come back here. I have guests." Rick left. Footfalls on the stairs behind Hanky. Brandon and Susie stood on the first landing. He locked the front door. "Is everything all right?" Brandon shielded Susie. "Were you listening to us?" "No, I was checking on my guests is all. Here at the Hanky house, through the fucking door, with your pants down?" Hanky's lip quivered. Brandon fumed. "I'm calling the cops." "Look, you can have a refund. Just please, don't tell. Please." "Susie, call the cops." Hanky's face grew feverish with tears. "Please don't tell on me." Susie froze. "My phone is upstairs. I can't leave you." Hanky cursed himself. He couldn't just wait. He'd ruined everything. He took Jesus by the hand. Brandon turned his back. "Just go, Susie. I'll be okay." She screamed. Brandon turned just in time to catch the feet of Jesus to the face. The statuette and skull both shattered. He turned the other cheek and lay on the floor, spasming. Jesus rolling next to him. Susie ran upstairs. Hanky caught her by the waist at the top. "Please don't tell! I'm a good boy!" They fell. Susie rolled out of his grasp and down the stairs. Her neck snapped on the landing below. Hanky wailed, tears and snot falling from his face. He crawled downstairs and mounted her, cradling her limp head in his hands. "No! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" He sat at the kitchen table sipping tea, racking his brain for a plan. Only one thing to do. The homunculus spell. Problem was, he didn't have all the ingredients. The spell was specific, threads from a lover's bed, but they hadn't finished. He'd interrupted them. Still, he had to try. He only ever used it to make copies of the females, but in theory, he could copy them both. Or something like them. He undressed Susie, sniffing her panties. She smelled divine. He unlocked the basement door, the stench of pig shit hot in the air. Downstairs, he stripped naked and, with some doing, positioned the sow. She'd eaten all the ingredients. Iron sulfide, phosphate, sulfur, magnets, lead, animal blood, Hanky's semen. The last ingredient, threads of a lover's bed, he didn't have. The homunculus spell was very specific. He prayed Susie's panties would do the trick. If it worked, he'd make Brandon next. Then he'd figure out what to do with the bodies. One last huff of her panties, and he fed them to the sow. Hand on her forehead, he said the magic words. Zikletu, ulamai, ingnam, no shush. The sow winced, farted, and shit on herself. She collapsed, squealing in pain. Blood dribbled from her mouth. Something was wrong. She was supposed to birth a homunculus, but she wasn't crowning. She swelled in the wrong place. He backed away. A symbol burned into the sow's stomach and disappeared as her tummy burst. A slender hand emerged from the darkness of the cavity, and out crawled the most beautiful homunculus he'd ever seen. She looked like Susie, only a head shorter, his height. She stood naked, covered in blood. Her eyes caressed his soul. He couldn't help it. He pulled her in. She resisted his tongue at first, then took him without restraint. They moved to the dirt. She mounted him. She was slick as oil as he slid inside. Her hymen burst. Virgin blood soaked him. She writhed. "Oh, Susie!" Their eyes locked. Mucus dripped from their mouths. She gurgled. "Susie! Oh, Susie!" Her hands wrapped around his neck. She squeezed him. Everything tensed, and he saw spots. His hands dug into the dirt. "Susie!" They came together screaming. She kept squeezing his throat. He couldn't breathe. "I love..." There was a deafening blast, and her head exploded. She slumped forward, blood pouring from her neck into his face. He couldn't hear himself scream. Upside down, Rick stood face open, the barrel of Grandpa's shotgun smoking. Hanky slid out of her and was in his brother's face. "Why did you do that? Why?" Rick stammered. "I saw the bodies upstairs and heard screaming, but you and her..." He turned and vomited. "Rick, what you saw..." Rick leveled the shotgun. "Shut up, Hank." "It's Hanky!" Rick shook. "You're sick, Hank. You've always been. You need..." Rick's eyes bulged at something behind Hanky. He turned to see the body of Susie standing before him. She grew claws. They dug into Hanky's arms, drawing blood. He screamed, urinating down his leg. An eyeless baby's head emerged from her neck hole. It wailed, newborn and angry at the world. "Susie, no!" The baby's head screeched. A single angry eye opened in the middle of its forehead. "Dada!" She crowned, giving birth to a skinless reptile head. It bit Hanky. He squealed in agony as the baby's head gagged. A worm as thick as a man's leg emerged from its mouth. The worm suckled at Hanky's face. "Rick, help me!" But Rick was already gone. He dropped Grandpa's shotgun and ran up the stairs, unable to flee the screams of his brother fast enough. He fled to the front door and stopped. A strange urge overtook him. He walked to the kitchen and turned on every burner of the gas oven, but lighting none of them. Free of the wild urge, Rick ran outside where he stared at the house frozen by fear. Neighbors stood on stoops listening to Hanky scream. Rick shuffled on his feet. "Go back inside, folks. Nothing to see here." His hair stood on end. What the heck? The sky turned white as the largest lightning bolt ever hit Dayton, Ohio, and struck the Hanky house bed and breakfast. Rick woke in an ambulance, head ringing, his eyes locked with the morose plaster face of Jesus. The statue was lodged in his stomach. Cheese and rice. The EMT's head whipped around. "Holy fuck, you're awake! Stay calm, man. You're doing fine right now." "What's your name?" "It's Dan, my man." "Do you believe in divine intervention?" Rick stared at Jesus. Jesus winked. Dan patted Rick's burnt leg. "Hey, don't get fucking religious on me. You're gonna live. Let's listen to some music. That'll help. You like metal?" Dan played something heavy, melodic and melancholy from a Bluetooth speaker. He nodded in tune. "Listen to that shit. Badass, right?" Rick didn't answer. He laid back and let the music bless him with sleep, the likes of which he would never know again. All this reminiscing has me feeling all warm and fuzzy, and tad nauseated. Maybe even a bit more than a tad nauseated, if I'm being honest. I think a respite is needed and in order, but I'm not done with this beastly book, not by a long shot, so I'll need you all to come back next week to hear part 2 of my frightening family history. Until then, stay safe and don't necessarily trust the person you look at across from you at the family dinner table. Weekly Spooky is performed by Henrik Kuto. Music and sound design has been created by Ray Mattis. Produced by Dan Wilder. Tonight's special stories were Romance is Dead by David O. Hanlon, Country Cookin' by Christopher Dowell, Young Eve by Rob Fields, Evolution in the Reanimation Indigestion Consternation by Joe Solmo, and Hanky and the Homunculus by Killian Crane.